In a rapidly changing era, people pursue efficiency and a high quality of life. That's why repetitive work has always been a source of trouble for everyone. This has given way to the birth of the omniscient AI system. It will liberate humans from mundane tasks, giving them more time to pursue more valuable and fulfilling vocations. This omniscient AI system will be used in finance, healthcare, and every other industry out there. It will improve work efficiency and reduce human errors, creating more value for humanity. Humanity can thank the system's sole genius developer Junction for this. However, the media is more worried about ethical privacy and unemployment concerns, not seeing that AI will create more opportunities for everyone. Shinchin also strictly adhere to relevant laws and ethical standards to protect user privacy and rights. He coolly bade farewell to the press, telling them to look forward to what he had in store. Before entering the car, he was suddenly shot in the chest, a bullet piercing his heart. Pandemonium descended in the streets. The finest mind of the current generation was assassinated. A shady man walked away from the chaos with a calm professionalism. Junction felt his senses dull as he lay on the cold concrete floor. He had just received the Nobel Prize, and he had so many plans for humanity's future. That must have been why a higher power gave him another shot. He heard a mysterious voice initializing the reconstruction of his body into something called Robert. Maybe it's the voice of the netherworld. But the man of science had a hard time accepting that. Reflecting on his life, he had many regrets. He's been so consumed by his work at every waking hour, so if there's an afterlife, he would like to do as he pleases. Sensing his wish, the system calculated a life plan suited for it. With his life data import completed, Junction was granted the unique skill called What You See is What You Get. The next thing you know, the voice of the netherworld was gone. Unbeknownst to the genius, he was transported to the secret forest in the middle of the night. A miserably cold sensation spread across his body. He could feel the temperature, wind, and humidity. He can feel things, so he's not dead yet, and his lower body feels especially cold, thinking of scenarios similar to what he's experiencing now. Junction panicked and jumped up, rooting himself from the silty ground and crashing headfirst on the soil. Out in the open, he could sense his body's outline, texture, and smell. Ideas and realizations wildly flashed inside his mind. If he was not mistaken, he had been reincarnated as a big F white carrot. Yes, you heard that right. Under the night sky, where the moon's gleam served as his spotlight, the carrot side. Just a few minutes ago, he was a genius scientist with a boundless vision to push humanity to a new era. Now he has to accept the fact that he has been reincarnated as a big white carrot. He also heard the voice of the netherworld call him Robert before he was thrust into this dark place. Even his new name sounded like something straight from the bottom of the food chain. Then he heard that voice again, a monotonous and emotionless way of speaking, initializing the system. Once the initialization was done, the system demanded to be named. It looks like effective two-way communication is out of the question for now. The first name that came to his mind was his masterpiece of a project, the omniscient AI system, to honor his unfinished business. Then came the blinding bright light, seemingly descending from the heavens above. Looking at it would make anyone's eyes hurt. With the system set up as an omniscient AI system, Robert will be provided with all-knowing and all-powerful services. Seeing that wall of text made his eyes gleam with all kinds of possibilities. To make it easier, he gave the system another nickname. Xiaoquan, the first thing he asked from the all-knowing database was what exactly he was. Is he a plant or an animal? What about gender? Xiaoquan beeped and responded that he belongs to the lowest-level demon clan in this world, a carrot spirit. Usually carrot spirits have the lowest demon power. They are genderless and not often preyed upon by stronger creatures, so he should be relatively safe at the very least. The next thing he asked Xiaoguan was whether he had any tasks lined up. Generally in web novels, the system would often assign tasks to the transmog grader. But Xiaoquan didn't give him any grant missions. It just told him to enjoy his second chance in life, so he was not some kind of overpowered MC. Robert is destined for a casual carrot life, but the genius in him still wanted to plan his career properly. His planning and deep thinking were interrupted by another unfamiliar burst of light that almost blasted him away. He must have crashed against something solid, and it hurt like hell, but his curiosity as to what the solid dome of light was much more intriguing. Focusing his eyes inside the light dome, he caught a glimpse of something otherworldly. There was a woman inside the dome. She was seemingly floating in the air as the light danced around her motionless body. Robert was speechless at the sight of such a theory of beauty. She had long and flowing white hair. The features of her face were nothing short of angelic, and the mysterious rings of runes surrounding her accentuated the mystery. But more than anything, she looked like a human. The woman must have heard Robert bugging out at the sight of the first human he saw and softly opened her eyes, curious as to what that sound was. Just as Robert was thrilled to see a human, the lady was just as delighted to hear the voice of one too. She had fully woken up and saw that the human she was expecting to see was actually a walking and talking white carrot. They made eye contact. Robert blushed, and the lady felt her heart flutter. The mystery lady had never seen such a big demon vegetable before. She ran to the edge of the light dome and curiously asked him how he got to this place. And if he was the one speaking the human tongue just now, it had been so long since she last saw a living creature that she did not know how to act right. At this moment, Robert still does not know that the girl in front of him will actually turn out to be a powerful witch who wants to destroy the world, a global scourge. Future Robert knew, but President Robert was too busy looking at her genuine curiosity and charm, making his heart thump fast and his eyes glued. The lady kept on telling him that he looked so big and so cute, and she wanted to have him even though she could not fathom just how such a big carrot spirit managed to enter the secret forest. Realizing that he might have a unique opportunity in this situation, Robert fixed himself as much as a carrot could. He struck a pose, said hello, and asked if his size was considered large in this world. Robert's scientist brain kicked in as he tried to make sense of how a sleeping girl could be floating in the middle of the forest. Furthermore, he felt a sudden and chilling sensation of oppression. The moment she opened her eyes, meanwhile, she wholeheartedly explained that normally carried spirits are very small. They have no nutritional value, and even if swallowed, they don't provide spiritual energy. Robert just can't connect to the oppressive feeling to this sincere girl after her lengthy lecture about how useless carrot demons are. She went back to ask just why he was so big. No matter how you look at her, she's just an ignorant and inexperienced young girl with an inquisitive mind. However, Robert's careful nature made him think twice about how to handle the situation. Just what kind of innocent lady would be sealed inside a powerful barrier? The closer he got to the barrier in question, the ominous feeling grew she might be some devious spirit deceiving a pure-hearted carrot. Still, he was confident that no one could easily manipulate the most renowned scientific mind in the world. So the grand plan was to act all innocent and cuddly, harmlessly, asking who the girl was and the reason she was trapped in the barrier. But the lady responded in a similar vein. She acted like a klutz, failing to remember the answers to his questions. She even took it a step further and cried that she couldn't remember anything at all. The only thing she could recall was her name by Rui. Then came the pleading to be let out. Since she woke up, it's unclear just how many years have passed since she was imprisoned in this place. Every day, all she did was sleep or stare into the empty space. Robert was inherently cautious, and he swore to himself that he would never easily fall for this act. As the girl banged on the barrier dome, acting cute and begging for his help, he saw a phantom of the past, the image of a witch bathed in blood and darkness that brought about destruction everywhere she went, with tears in her eyes. The one thing the innocent girl has in common with the witch is their desire to never be imprisoned alone in a lonely place anymore. As long as she can get out, she's willing to do anything. All this creepy stuff that Robert was perceiving messed with his head quite harshly. After regaining his bearings, he got curious as to what exactly that bizarre scene was just now. The lady wordly asked him if he was okay. She continued that as expected for a carrot spirit. Just getting close to this place is the limit. She assured him that she'd be fine and he didn't have to force himself to help. However, Robert is the type of guy who has the itch to figure out an explanation for everything that he sees, and he is confident that what happened earlier was not an illusion by chance. So he asked Shock when the system, if the all-knowing and all-powerful companion, could break the barrier seal. Robert chucks this risky business to the exploration of unsolved mysteries that every half-decent scientist should venture into. Xiaoguan instructed him to make contact with the surface of the barrier. His "what you see is what you get" skill was promptly activated. After a decoding process, Shao Kahn warned him that the barrier could not be fully destroyed due to the limit of his current spiritual power pool. However, the omniscient AI system can create a substitute for an alternative solution. He curiously asked Shao Guan to elaborate on this substitution thing. It stated that without destroying the barrier itself, a substitute can be created to replace the girl trapped inside the prison. However, the duration of the substation is also limited by the user's spiritual power. In addition, the girl will automatically be registered as his retainer. She would be able to retain a high degree of autonomy and free will, but cannot disobey the master's orders. This is what being a retainer meant to Robert. That sounds right up his egotistical alley. Having absolute control over someone else really suits his preferences. While he was chatting with the system prompt, the lady was still waiting for his response. Robert the Carrot finally decided to release the lady now, but warned her that she would have to become his retainer to do so. He prepared a whole speech to convince her to agree, but the lady was already willing to do whatever it took to get out. She does not want to talk it over, and she does not need an extensive explanation of what being a retainer means. And that was because she already knew what being a retainer entails. She knew that if she was to take Robert's helping hand to get out, he would be her master, and she was 100% down with that. Hearing her say those words and look like an irresistible angel almost turned the carrot into a bumbling fool, to spur him even further. The lady put on a sultry voice and slowly asked him what he wanted to do with her as soon as she got out of the barrier, sliding her hand down to her chest. She seductively proclaimed that she was open to everything that he wanted. That's the kind of retainer she will be. Robert, who died from a gunshot wound in his previous life, almost died of blood loss from a nosebleed due to his forbidden thoughts and the second life based on Chalcone's calculations. They could scrounge up a 1-hour substitution per day. When asked if Robert wanted the substation to materialize, now he asked for a timeout as he was still feeling lightheaded because of his dirty thoughts. Thankfully, the little piece of rationality he still had kicked in, and he laid down a few conditions before they entered this venture. The lady was open to listening to his demands. First, because of her severe amnesia, she will have to obey his every command from now on. Otherwise, the agreement will be null and void. Second, she can only leave the barrier for 1 hour each day when his spiritual capacity increases in the future. This 1 hour can be extended. And last but not least, those strangely seductive and flirty movements and expressions just now cannot be seen by anyone else. Robert wants those for himself. She smiled and readily agreed to his terms and conditions, busting out her flirty gestures once again. She swore that these things would be for him, and him only. Our boy could not even handle a little bit of the heat. How could he even handle the whole flame? With the conditions settled, Robert initiated the process. Even if what he releases turns out to be a deceitful and mischievous presence, he just can't resist the adorable girl in front of him. The omniscient AI system quickly started generating the substitute out of thin air. Once done, a bizarre-looking substitution puppet synthesis has been successfully brought into the physical world using the puppet as a proxy into the inside of the barrier. The substitution process followed a bright light illuminated the surroundings and eventually wrapped around the puppet's body. The next thing you know, the lady from the barrier was already out in the grassy ground of the secret forest for the first time. And God knows how long after the substitution process concluded, the midnight silence returned. She looked behind and saw the barrier from the outside for the first time in forever. She really did come out. Her only wish has been granted thanks to this weird big white carrot who came from out of nowhere. Unfortunately, The substitution and the clever escape plan took more toll on his frail vegetable body than expected, with his spiritual power depleted and his whole frame deflated. Roy panicked. She just got out, and it looked like her master was already on the brink of death. She dubbed him dug in and swiftly ran to his side, picked his flaccid body up, and stuck him in between her chest. Wait a minute for a sec. Like, if you have watched my video for this long, how about giving me a like and subscribe? You can get more update when I upload again. Robert would have loved to be in this position had he been feeling a little better, but being lodged between her breasts is just making him feel even weaker. Sucked to drive spirit power, the soft sensation made him drain his blood from a severe nosebleed. Roy was terrified. She just got her ticket out of this place, and the said ticket was already accepting the coming of a second death due to a fragile fate. Unbeknownst to the two, something has been set into motion tonight. Looking into the distance towards the dense forest, prominent figures of the world sense that the spiritual pressure that had always existed in the middle of the secret forest had disappeared by a rush towards her dog again, who looked like he had just seen a lifelong carousel on the brink of death. He was getting more and more wilted by the second, but Robert felt like he could still salvage the situation. Somehow he asked for help to support him back up, and the lady let him lean on her to stay upright. She put his shriveled body against her silky smooth lap and asked if it would make him feel better. It did not help his condition at all. Fortunately, he had no blood left to spurt from his nose, regaining some of his wits. Robert asked to show Quinn how he could possibly restore himself to being a fresh, white carrot. It turned out that the simplest method to regain his health was to plant himself in the soil. Such a simple solution sounded like a joke to him. He asked the system if it was not just tricking him, as this answer did not seem to be rooted in any scientific basis. Shao Kahn elaborated that the soil and the secret forest contains rich spiritual energy, and water once planted on it, he can use the absorbability to quickly gain energy, sort of like a charger. Barry was confused as to who her master was talking to, as he seemed a bit delirious. She thought that this weird master of hers had an imaginary friend or something. Thinking about it from a scientific standpoint, the absorbability can be understood as utilizing a plant's root system to absorb and convert the spiritual energy and moisture in the soil into its own energy. It is a process similar to photosynthesis and regular plants. It's just that when it comes to vegetable demons, the method involves spiritual energy. Robert had to admit that Xiaoguan is quite good at talking nonstop nonsense, so it's hard to argue by Roy's first task because his official retainer was to help plant her master in the soil. Losing strength in his legs, Robert tripped and fell into her massive front pillows again. It certainly softened to the fall, but it was also suffocating. She asked if being planted on the soil would be enough for him to regain his spiritual power, and he seemed to think that it was the only solution, but Roy revealed that she can also transfer spiritual power directly to him. The amount of power she had accumulated is bordering infinity, even if she could keep using it continuously. Her reservoir might not be depleted for 100 years straight. Robert was pleased to hear of a reliable alternative. Method, aside from burying himself like a lowly plant by Ray, was pumped to give it a try and provide some aid to her new master. Robert also trusted her to do right by him, as she was the only one he could count on. Much to his surprise, the angelic lady proceeded to pucker up her luscious lips, closing her eyes and moving her head closer to him. Robert blushed and tried to get out of her grasp, but he did not expect the transfer process to be so direct and salacious when he failed to shake away from her tight grasp. Robert tried to appeal that it was not appropriate for them to kiss so casually like this, but Roy must have not heard his pleas. Or maybe she just didn't care. The mysterious lady with infinite power commenced with the transfer of spiritual power through the power of a kiss right as her lips touched him. Robert felt a surge of energy like he had never felt before, of feeling so euphoric and different that it made him jump into the air. He could physically feel the transformation taking place in his body. His carrot hair felt more illustrious. His beautiful legs could run around the secret forest without feeling fatigued, and even his perky buttocks could reflect the bright moonlit sky. Right now, he feels like the most vibrant carrot in the world, even though from an outside perspective, he still looks like a shriveled-up vegetable. After a while, the reality set in that he's just expired produce that no one wants to pick it. The market behind him, he could faintly hear the system prompt mockingly snicker at his plight. When he tried to confront Xiao Quan, the system returned to that same monotonous voice telling him that it was just an emotionless system. Bai Roy did not know what to say or do. Her boss truly seemed like he had an imaginary friend. He's truly a magical root turning to his retainer. He could feel that the main thing he was lacking right now was water. That imaginary friend of his still thinks that being planted in the soil would solve this glaring problem. Hearing that, Bai Wei smiled and assured her boss that she would dig the pit for him to bury into with one of her fingers. The witch coalesced a densely packed and compressed ball of power. She pointed it towards the nearby land, and the ball of power hurtled with unstoppable momentum. Hitting the ground, the ball immediately caused destruction. That little compressed ball of power eventually made a mushroom cloud explosion akin to a nuclear weapon test in the middle of the quiet secret forest. For the first time, Robert saw the tiniest extent of how powerful his retainer really was. As the thick smoke billowed through the woods and its inhabitants scattered in panic, a certain location on the outskirts of the secret forest picked up the massive event. A catboy hurriedly entered a tent with a report to his young master inside regarding the loud sound that came from the secret forest. The demonic beasts inhabiting the woods are fleeing in all directions. The young master sitting on the throne was intrigued. Not long ago, he was one of the few who sets the disappearance of the spiritual pressure in the secret forest. This disturbance could be connected to that prior event, which means that a new storm is about to rise. The beast's man's young master raised his hand to action to subordinate to notify the entire clan of what was happening. They must prepare for departure as the new era is calling. He wants to lead everyone to expand the territory and proactively embrace this new age. They must avoid being left behind at all costs. Back in the restricted area of the secret forest, the explosion had died down, but Robert was still traumatized and weakened. Credit where credit is due. Bai Rui's quick-digging explosion was highly effective. She made a hole so big that she could not even see Robert at the bottom of it. Meanwhile, the genius stuck in the body of a white carrot was amping himself up to bury himself in the dirt. If the process takes any longer, it would be very bad for him. He was cursing his retainer's ridiculous strength, which dug a hole so deep and massive that he was having a hard time burying it. If he tried releasing her from their contract, he'd be practically digging another hole for himself to die in, removing all the unnecessary thoughts in his head. He continued shoveling dirt with his legs, focusing on the task at hand. After getting sufficiently deep, he launched himself between the soil and dirt, waiting for the recovery to happen. He looked like something else from certain angles, since he's already buried. He called Bai Rui to come down to the hole and wait for him. Little Miss Loyal Retainer gladly jumped to the gigantic sinkhole that she made, trying to reach her master's side. It had been a while since he got his bottom half in the dirt, but he still felt as miserable and powerless as ever. Meanwhile, Bai Roy, he sat beside him curiously watching and asking if the method was working, yet not feeling comfortable with her being so close. He told Bai Rui to step back a little bit and not interfere with his skill. She complied, and he inhaled, clearing his mind of dirty and unnecessary thoughts. As soon as he exhaled, something inside him activated at the same time as his body regained its healthy color and sheen. Under the layer of soil, a magical process was just kick-started. He can finally see the purpose of the carrot's leg hair. He could feel the sensation of energy moving directly from the earth and into his frame. Robert was surprised to find out that he had this strange skill to absorb the energy of the earth deeply engraved in his mind. The motions of using it felt incredibly familiar already. Thanks to that, he regained 100% of his energy to break Bai Rui out of her prison. Back, he was reborn and restored as a stronger carrot. Bai Rui looked at her dug in with wide-eyed wonder and amazement. She could see that her master just grew bigger. Robert regained his confidence, puffing his chest out, and tried to come out of the soil by himself. After a few tries, he accepted that he was too weak to pull himself out of the hole. He had to ask by Rui for help, but the lady gladly positioned her hands on his head and assured him that she was super skilled when it came to pulling out stuff that was big, long, and hard. She tried her hardest to pull him out as quickly as possible, holding her breath and skin flushing with a deep shade of red. Finally, Robert has been pulled out. He looks like he just had the best release of his life with how great it felt. Then he was reminded that he used to be the foremost leader in the world of science, and now he's quite literally stuck in this ridiculous situation as a big white carrot. It was a success. And now, when our hero was full of strength, it was time to move out by re-asked Chun-Shin what their plan of action was. He replied that his spiritual power was currently limited by its capacity, and if he wouldn't be careful, he might turn into a wilted carrot again. So for this case, he had created a plan B and joined by Rui's softness. He explained to her that it was a so-called backup plan. From what he saw, Chungshan came to the conclusion that in this world, there most likely existed supernatural beings that were also known as demons. The energy source of such beings was most likely spiritual energy, without even asking by really about it. Our hero was certain that there were cultivators, various factions, and other magical beings present in this world. That was what carried the danger. At the moment, his spiritual energy was only enough to keep Rui outside the barrier for 1 hour, and if he turned into a wilted carrot, he probably wouldn't be able to deal with the danger on his own in this state. The chance of him dying was almost 100%. Hearing this, Roy smilingly assured that he had nothing to worry about since he could borrow spiritual power from her. However, Junction had no intention of going this way. It might not be a bad thing for him now, but it could play a cruel joke on him in the long run. He couldn't rely on her strength all the time. In his previous life, his death had been premature, but in this life, he was determined to act cautiously to continue his research in this world. After careful reflection and analysis, Chungshan eventually came to the conclusion that for him, the right and proper life path was scientific cultivation. When I really asked him what it was, he proudly replied that the essence of this path was an efficient and healthy lifestyle. It was a road to gradually achieve the 4 stages of modernization, to then take big steps towards the 5th era of modernization. The combination of human cognitive abilities with artificial intelligence was the hallmark of the 5th Industrial Revolution. In this